Toledo Biz TV Shows proudly presents this episode of Business Sense, Making Sense of the Business World, with your host, Certified Public Accountant Ron Brangham.
Do you use your vehicle in your business for business purposes? Well, if you do, you can take a deduction on your tax return for car expenses. And we all love those tax deductions. So let's take a look at how we calculate the deduction. Well, there are two methods to determine a deduction. There's a standard mileage rate or the actual expenses method. Well, for 2012, the standard mileage rate is 55.5 cents a mile. Well, under the actual expenses method, you can deduct expenses such as depreciation, fuel, repairs and maintenance, insurance, and other expenses related to the vehicle. Under the actual expenses method, you calculate your business use percent and you multiply that by the actual expenses to determine the amount of the deduction. Let's take a look at a couple of different examples. In the first example, we have Bob, who drives about 8,000 total miles per year, about 4,800 miles for business. He has $6,000 in expenses. Under the standard mileage rate, you would take the 4,800 miles, multiply by 55.5 cents a mile, and you get a $2,664 deduction. Well, under the actual expenses method, you would take the actual expenses of $6,000, multiply it by the percent, which is 60% business use, and you get a $3,600 tax deduction. Well, the actual expenses method exceeds the standard mileage rate, so we would go with that option. Well, let's take a look at option number 2. Sally, who is a traveling salesperson, she drives 30,000 miles per year total, about 27,000 miles for business. Well, under the standard mileage rate, she would get a deduction of $14,985, which is 27,000 miles multiplied by 55.5 cents per mile. Under the actual expenses method, she incurred, let's say, $10,000 in expenses by 90% business use. That gives you a $9,000 tax deduction. Well, the actual expenses method is less than the standard mileage rate, so we would go with the standard mileage rate. And in fact, almost $5,000 more deduction in this case. So that is a really good method to use if you have a very high mileage for business purposes. If you do want to take a deduction on your tax return for auto expenses, you do need to have documentation for those expenses. I know we don't always want to be able to document our mileage and stuff like that, but it is what the IRS requires, and if you get audited, you do need to be able to prove the deduction. Basically, you need to keep a mileage log. It needs to have the total miles per trip, the purpose of the trip, who you saw, and the location of that trip. So for the standard mileage rate, that's all you need is your mileage log. For the actual expenses method, though, you need your mileage log and documentation of all of your expenses. So sometimes people just want to be able to use the standard mileage rate because they don't want to document all of their expenses, even though sometimes they may get a little bit better deduction with the actual expenses. Well, I have more details about business use of your vehicle, the standard mileage rate, and the expenses that you can deduct, and the documentation that you have to have at my blog, on my website, www.branghamcpa.com. So go and check that out. And if you have any additional questions, you can give us a call at 419-872-2221, and you can set up a free initial consultation for any new prospective clients.
Toledo Biz TV Shows thanks you for watching this episode of Business Sense with CPA Ron Brangham. For more great information, visit Ron's website at www.branghamcpa.com. Also browse the other shows found right here at Toledo Biz TV Shows.